Self-trust seems like one of those things that you either have or you don't. But if you look at where it actually shows up in your business, in the price you set and whether you stick to it, in the message you share and whether you mean it, or in the plans you make and whether you back them, it starts to look a lot less like a personality trait and a lot more like a skill. And the good news is that skills can be trained. There's particular kind of frustration that comes with this one because it so easily gets misread. You write the post and then you rewrite it, not because the first version was wrong, but because you're watering it down so that it's more widely palatable before you post it. You adjust the price of your offer, not because you done a careful review of your positioning, for example, but because the thought of someone saying no to it at the higher number feels harder than the thought of earning less. Or you look back at the last few months and realized you've moved away from things that were working or might have worked if given a longer chance, not because the evidence told you to, but because the doubt got to you first. You second guess your read on your audience. You wonder if your niche is right, if your offer makes sense, if the people who do buy are the exception rather than the rule. The frustrating thing is that you're not inexperienced. You know that your work has value. You've had clients, you've had results, you've had moments where everything seemed fine. But now that track record isn't continuing forward the way it should. That's not a confidence problem in the general sense. It's specifically what happens when self-trust hasn't been developed as a skill. And when every doubt cycle erodes it a little further without anything actively rebuilding it. Welcome back to my channel on entrepreneurial leadership development for women in online business. I'm Lyndon, and here we talk about building the internal capacity that makes everything you do in your online business move you in the direction of progress rather than it feel like hit and miss and unreliable. I've been in the online business space for about 9 years, and everything I teach is drawn from what I've learned and experienced and developed in it. So let's get into it. Over the last couple of weeks on this channel, I've been building out the Build the Business Owner Guide to Business Building framework, my articulation of the cycle that allows a business to build rather than just tread water. If you've been following along, you'll know that one of the central pieces of that cycle is self-trust, both as the thing that allows you to commit to a decision before you have evidence that it's right, and as the thing that keeps you in the cycle during the keeping the faith phase. End results are thin on the ground. So today I want to focus on self-trust specifically because I think it's one of the most misunderstood things in the online business space. It gets talked about as though it's a mindset that you can switch on or something you find by just doing enough inner work. And while mindset work and wider inner work have a foundational place as they determine who you are as a business owner, self-trust in a business context has a practical dimension because it's built through a specific kind of experience and it's eroded through a specific kind of pattern. So here's what I mean. Self-trust in business is the ability to act from your own assessment rather than needing external confirmation before you move. It shows up or it doesn't in very specific places. Pricing is one of the clearest. When you set a price and you stick to it, not because you're stubborn, but because you've thought it through and you're backing your own judgment, that is self-trust in action. But when you adjust it reactively before someone even said no, that's self-trust disappearing under doubt and pressure, and it costs you revenue, but more than that, because you're starting a pattern of allowing discomfort to dissolve your self-trust on an ongoing basis. Visibility is another one. The decision about what to say, how directly to say it, whether to share a perspective that might not be universally popular. All of those involve a moment of trusting your own read on your audience and your own sense of what's worth saying. When that trust is low, the content gets safer, more general, more watered down, and less distinctly you. And ironically, that's usually when the engagement you're seeking drops because you're being woolly. And then that feels more like a confirmation that you got things wrong. And sales conversations, the shift that happens when someone isn't immediately enthusiastic about an offer. So the business owner starts adjusting and softening and over explaining, not because the offer isn't right, but because the absence of that instant confirmation comes across as rejection. That's not a sales skill problem. It's a self-trust problem, creating a sales skill problem. Here's how self-trust erodes in business. Every time you make a decision and then walk it back before it has a time to tell you anything, you teach yourself that your decisions aren't reliable. Every time you look at someone else's approach or results as evidence that yours are wrong, you train yourself to distrust your own thinking. And it's a chipping away that's not necessarily noticeable unless you're actively looking for it and for when it happens, because it's made up of all the small moments of abandoning your own judgment under the feeling of pressure. But here's how it's rebuilt, not through trying to force yourself to believe or not feel the way that you feel, but through the deliberate practice of making a decision, backing it, staying with it long enough to generate real information from your business, and then evaluating it from that place. Each time that you do that, each time you complete that cycle, rather than abandoning it in the middle, you add to a record that your brain and nervous system can actually use. Oh, she's got this. No puppies died. That's where real self-trust comes from. It's not a feeling. It's a body of evidence that you've built yourself. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, or if every time you start to use it, something stops you before you feel any resistance, it doesn't develop. But the more you work it, the more that you back yourself in small ways and medium ways, and then eventually bigger ones, the more that it grows. And a well-developed self-trust muscle changes the experience of business quite fundamentally. Not because the uncertainty goes away, not because anything in the world of external business actions changes, but because your relationship to it is different. So what does this look like in practice? Not the feeling of self-trust, but the way that it shows up in your business when self-trust is something that you actively develop. You set your prices and you stick to them, not rigidly. You review them when there's a reason to, but the review comes from your own considered thinking, not from the anxiety of an empty inbox or someone else's raised eyebrow. The price reflects what you've decided the work is worth. And you can stand in that without making it a judgment on your character when someone else has something that amounts to an opinion. You go into a sales conversation as the person who knows what your offer is and who it's for. When someone isn't sure, you don't dive into persuasion mode or start discounting your offer in real time. You stay in the role of someone who understands the problem and can speak clearly to whether the offer is the right fit. And that groundedness actually makes the conversation easier for both parties. I'm sure you've been in a situation, whether it's in business or in life more generally, when someone else's nerves or discomfort made you feel uncomfortable too. It's the same thing here. If you put pressure on a sales conversation for whatever reason, it just makes the whole experience more unpleasant for everyone. And you create content from your own perspective rather than from a constant scan of what seems to be working for everyone else. You still pay attention to how it's received by your ideal client, not the world and his keyboard warrior of a dog. You still refine over time. You still learn from your true audience, but the starting point is your own thinking, not an attempt to reverse engineer someone else's response. The content sounds like you, and that over time is what builds the kind of audience that actually understands what you offer and then buys. So the key shift I want to leave you with from this video is this. Self-trust isn't something that you wait to feel. It's something that you build one bad decision at a time. And there's nothing wrong with you or your abilities as a business owner if it doesn't feel easy. This week, see if you can spot one place where you're waiting for external confirmation before you act. A price that you haven't committed to yet, a post that you keep redrafting, or a decision that you've made but not yet felt confident enough to fully back. And ask yourself, what would it look like to move from your own assessment instead? Not recklessly or a my way or the highway type of thing. There's a line, there's always a line, but just from your own thinking with the intention of staying with what you believe to be best for your business long enough to find out what that objectively tells you. Next week, I'm going somewhere that might feel like a departure, but really isn't. We're talking about why regulation practices like journaling, movement, and creating stillness actually belong inside your business strategy, not separate from it. If you've ever wondered how the non-business parts of how you look after yourself have any bearing on how you lead your business, that's what we'll be exploring. And if what we've covered in the last 3 weeks, the framework, the decision cycle, and now self-trust has made you feel like you're ready to actually work on this rather than just think about it, recalibrate your 30-day practice to confident decision making is where that work begins. It's an audio program and it's the practical starting point that I would point you to. And the link is in the description. If this series is giving you a way of thinking about your business that feels genuinely useful, then subscribing to my channel means you'll have the next part of it as it comes out next week. And if someone in your world is at the stage of business that would find this helpful, sharing this video with them is probably one of the most useful things that you could do with it. And I would love to see you next week. Bye for now.